Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Hi, hello, vanakkam and welcome to Little Sla YouTube channel, and this is me, Yavasant Shanmugam. So today we are going to see about what is a SQL, which we call as SQL. So we'll see what is SQL, how do we use it, why to learn SQL, and what are the various uses of SQL. So first let's start with what is a SQL. A SQL SQL is a database computer language which is designed for the retrieval and management of data in a relational database. And this SQL stands for Structured Query Language. So in this video, we'll give you a quick start to SQL and we'll cover most of the topics required for the basic understanding of SQL, and we'll see how it works. So first, before we see what is SQL and how it works, first let's see why should we learn SQL. So the SQL is a structured query language which is a computer language for storing, manipulating and retrieving data stored in a relational database. And this SQL is the standard language for relational database system and all the relational database management systems like MySQL, MS Access, Oracle, Sybase, Postgres, and SQL Server use SQL as their standard database language. Also, they are using different dialects such as MS SQL, Server using T-SQL, Oracle using PL SQL. So let's now see where this SQL is applied and what are all the applications of SQL. So as I mentioned before, SQL is one of the most widely used query language over the databases. There are few other applications of SQL where we allow the users to access data in the relational database management systems. We allow the users to describe the data. We allow the users to define the data in a database and manipulate that data. We allow the users to embed within other languages using SQL modules, libraries, and pre-compilers. We allow users to create and drop databases and tables. We allow the users to create, view, stored procedures functions in a database, and we allow users to set permissions on tables, procedures, and views. So let's now move on to the next section, which is what is SQL or what is SQL. So SQL is a structured query language, which is basically a computer language which is used for storing, manipulating and retrieving data stored in a relational database. So when does this SQL started? What is the history of SQL? So SQL has started in 1970, which was created by Dr. Edgar, who's part of IBM, and he's known as the father of relational databases, and he described a relational model for databases. And then in 1974, the SQL, the structured query language, has appeared, and in 1978, IBM has worked to develop Dr. Edgar Codd's ideas and released a product named System R. And then in 1986, IBM developed the first prototype of relational database and standardized by ANSI, which is American Standards. And then the first relational database was released by Relational Software, which later came to be known as Oracle. So now let's see the SQL process. So when we execute a SQL command in any RDBMS, the system determines the best way to carry out our request, and the SQL engine figures out how to interpret the task. So when interpreting the task, it needs various components that is being included in the process. What are the components? So what are the components that is getting involved in the SQL process? We have multiple components. So first starts with the query dispatcher, and then we have the optimization engines, we have the classic query engine, and then we have the SQL query engine. So what is a classic query engine and what does it do? A classic query engine handles all the non-SQL queries, but a SQL query engine won't handle logical files. So here we can see a sample diagram which shows the SQL architecture where the SQL query sends or it moves to the query language processor, and then the query language processor to the DBMS engine, and then it reaches the physical database. Whereas we have the parser and optimizer sends the commands to the query language processor, and then the file manager with the transaction manager sends the data to the DBMS engine, and that has been added and sent to the physical database. So we'll see some basic commands, some basic SQL commands to interact with relational databases. So we have create, where we create new table, new view of a table, or any other objects we will create using the create command. And then we have the insert, we have the select, we have update, we have delete and drop. So the next data definition language, next to the create we have alter. So this alter modifies an existing database object such as table. So if you want to alter a table, if you want to add a column or remove a column, we can do it through alter command. And then we have this drop command, and this deletes an entire table. This will delete a view of a table and even the other objects in the database. And then we have the data manipulation language. So initially we saw data definition language where it defines. So the data definition language contains create, alter and drop, but the data manipulation language contains select, which retrieves certain records from one or more tables, and then we have the insert, which creates a record, and then we have the update, which modifies the record, and then we have delete command, which deletes the record. And then we have the DCL, which is the data control language, which grants privileges to user, and we have revoke, which takes back privileges granted from the user. So these are some of the very basic and very important one. So we saw about data definition language, we saw about data manipulation language, and we saw about data control language. And let's see more in our future videos, more about how does the select command, or how to create a table, or how to insert values into a table. So we'll see more of them in our future videos. So this is just an introduction to SQL, and I believe this video would have been very useful to you. So until we meet you in another interesting video, it's bye bye from Vasant Shanmugam and Little Slaw.